I will tell you, a few months ago, I was asked if I would come here and I would share some words with you. I will tell you that I was overly excited because the thought of having a battalion reunion, of getting together with my team again was incredible. And I've got some remarks prepared and I'll probably deviate from it, but what I want to share with you is I've been looking forward to this evening more than any of you all can even imagine. Because as the commander of 423, I had the privilege and the honor of assembling this team, you guys, putting you all together and taking you down range and bringing you home. And that meant a lot to me, okay? Now, I'm going to share some stories with you tonight because I prepared the remarks because I want to share them with you because I know you don't have those perspectives. But before I begin, I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to show up. It was not easy. And you know, because I gave you bullshit, that you can't have a social in the middle of the week. Everybody has jobs. We can't do this. But you all took time out of your busy schedules. You took time off. You took personal time off. You showed up. That tells me a lot. You're committed. Thank you for doing that. And I appreciate it. And I respect you all for doing that. I want to do a shout out. I know y'all seen them here, but we got a couple special ladies with us tonight. The first one I want to shout out is Marge Blankenship. She is a Tomahawk lady. Y'all may not know this, but when we stood up our battalion in Alaska, all of these 423 veterans from Vietnam started kind of coming out of the woodwork. They started coming out of the bushes. They started showing up at our headquarters. Well, Cecil Blankenship, her husband, one of our great partners, was one of those veterans that showed up. Well, he brought with him Marge. They've been a part of our Tomahawk family from the beginning. From the very beginning, when we stood up our battalion, Marge was an integral part of it. She's attended all of our battalion functions, and because Cecil was a veteran of Charlie Company 423 in Vietnam, they were partnered with Charlie Company. So they were embedded with Charlie Company on every Charlie Company event. So they are part of the Charlie Company's tribe, but they're also part of Tomahawk tribe. And she's a Tomahawk veteran. She's a Tomahawk Vietnam veteran. So, and thank you. She came all the way here from Alaska, and I really appreciate you showing up. And the other distinguished lady I would like to recognize is Susie Barnes. We all know her, we all love her. She is a distinguished member of our regiment, distinguished member of our battalion. She's part of us, and all I can say is thank you for watching out over our soldiers, and thank you for watching out over Bravo Company soldiers. And tonight, we got your six. And if you don't know anything about that, just ask Susie about what I got your six means. So, thank you for coming. All right, Dan. Sure. This would not happen if it wasn't for one individual who put the mark on the wall and says, you know what, we're going to do a reunion. We're going to do a battalion reunion. And when he reached out to me and when he sent out the first message, I was like, I'm all in. I was so much in that I was removed from the planners group that they had for this committee. It was like, I can't take Colonel Norris anymore. Get him off our So he's no longer invited to our chats because he's killing me. So, but sir, thank you. I appreciate it. Round of applause. This was absolutely long overdue. And gentlemen, I hope that this sets up the stage for future Tomahawk reunions where we can get more of our team. I will tell you that I have a huge following on Facebook because I like and friend every Tomahawk. And if I know they're Tomahawks, they're my family, okay? And if they're not on my friendship, then that's on me. I'm not on Twitter or none of that other bullshit, but I'm on Facebook. But the point is that I monitor and follow my entire tribe. my Tomahawk Battalion to the best of my ability. And I have outreach. So we're going to make this bigger. We're going to make it better. It's going to be bigger next year and the years after. So, sir, thank you for placing a mark on the wall.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Personal reflections. 20 years, 2 decades ago, we stood together in uniform on the streets of Fort Richardson. We were facing monumental challenges, forging the bonds that would last a lifetime. Over the course of the following months, we would collectively, that's an important word, I put in there purposely, collectively. This was not John Norris, it was not Clint Baker, it was not Brad Bellotta, it was every one of you were a part of building this organization. We collectively took on the task of standing up a Stryker battalion from scratch. And oh, by the way, we had no first lieutenants, and we had no mid-grade NCOs. Zero. What we had was a bunch of Jundies. We had a bunch of majors and colonels. So tonight, I want to share some personal reflections from the eyes of the commander. So as I began, there I was. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas in 2003. I was a major when I got the word. I recently selected for command of 117 Infantry. Y'all know that, they're from our brigade.
Yeah.
And thinking I was going to go work for U.S. Army Alaska for a year and take command up at Fort Wainwright. I received a call from Major General Brown. That he was the USARAC commander. He called to congratulate me and tell me that 172nd Brigade was going to become the 3rd Stryker Brigade in the U.S. Army. He said that a Stryker Brigade has 3 infantry battalions. And currently, there were only 2 infantry battalions in the 172nd. And the new infantry battalion was going to be 423 Infantry, and it was going to stand up at Fort Richardson. He congratulated me and said I was not going to take command of 117 Infantry next summer. I was going to be the new commander of 423 Infantry. He said, get here as soon as you can, you have a lot of work to do. So I reported to Alaska with my family after driving from Kansas via Kentucky, which is my hometown, then followed by 1,250 miles along the Alaska Highway. We did in fact have a lot of work to do, from standing up, from new soldier reception, mass soldier arrivals. We activated the battalion, we weathered Alaska snow. I will never forget seeing new soldiers arriving in Alaska wearing shorts and flip-flops, and soldiers dragging and soldiers dragging a new TV, this is no shit, dragging a brand new TV on a sled from Elmendorf PX back to the base. Or seeing Sergeant Barnes as he was marching dozens of soldiers around Fort Richardson. It looked like he was a drill instructor, but I was smiling because I knew that my team was growing on a daily basis. To new equipment training, receiving our strikers, training by ourselves, deployment, combat in Iraq's 2 largest cities, the dangerous cities, to redeployment, you all did it all, and you did it extremely well. You demonstrated combat courage immediately upon arrival in Iraq. During our right seat ride, first in the chute, was our recon leaders. We were not even completely in Iraq yet. Our battalion was still in Kuwait. Most of the battalion was in Kuwait. We had just a handful of leaders learning about our area of operations from 1-5 Infantry before we assumed responsibility. I was with the 1-5 Infantry commander, Colonel Todd McCaffrey, when his staff notified him and me, "Sir, there's a tick, troops in contact with injuries." And then the report said, "Sir, there's a PA doing first aid with casualty evacuation right now." Colonel McCaffrey looked at me and goes, "What?" He goes, "My PA never left the wire." We would soon learn that it was our PA, Doc Williams, and the recon platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Aguilar, that had taken over the fight. They had taken over the fight after 1-5 Infantry leaders were all shot and wounded. Doc Williams would later earn the Silver Star that night. For me, as your commander, this was a very unnerving and ominous insight into the year that lay ahead. Then there was Al Sinai, where many of my Tommies were tested in the crucible of war, earning their CIVs. Al Sinai was my first firefight that began after responding to a simple bolo and detaining what turned out to be an AQI leader. What you may not know is that it was Coop, my translator, if you remember Coop, my big Texan, that turned it into the massive firefight that it became when I noticed him yelling into the cell phone that he'd taken from the cell leader. I asked him, "What did you say, Coop?" He said, "Sir, I told him, if you want him, come and get him." Well, that's exactly what happened, and the simple capture of a Volvo vehicle with 3 detainees turned into a battalion firefight that lasted over 8 hours with dozens of injuries to my Tommies and Iraqi soldiers who unknowingly drove into the kill zone after returning from leave. This is where we first learned about the Iraqi death blossom, their version of the reactive contract deal where they expended all rounds in all directions. It was also during this engagement when we loaded the hooded and flex cup detainees into Command Sergeant Major Zavadsky's Stryker, and we continued the fight. After calling in Apache gunships, firing their miniguns over our heads and dropping hot brass on top of us, Sergeant Major Zavadsky, he made an announcement over the radio stating that we have successfully scared the shit out of the detainees because they have defecated themselves. So, Sergeant Major Zavadsky would never let detainees in his vehicle ever again. Oh, by the way, if you're not already tracking, Command Sergeant Major Zavadsky is the current honorary Command Sergeant Major of the 23rd Infantry Regiment. So he represents all of us, he represents all of you, and he is now covering down along with Colonel Fred Drew of Fort Lewis, Washington, and he gets to see each and every 23rd Infantry Regiment battalion in the regiment. Then there was Mahalabia. This was our first out-of-area combined mission with 3rd ACR. We now know as General H.R. McMaster, and linking up with Iraqi security forces at night, where our strikers, keep in mind, this is our first big battalion level mission. We do this at night, linking up with Iraqi security forces in a place we've never been, out of sector, out of our area of operation. I mean, it was insane. I was like, oh, okay, so this is the way it's going to be for the next year. But as we drove through Mahalabia, we cut almost every power line in town, and we absolutely won every heart and mind in the Iraqi We would later take over this same AO and the Rabia port of entry between Syria and Iraq, home of the Shamari tribe, which you all may not know, that they were the ones responsible for illegal smuggling and explosives and bringing in suicide bombers into Iraq. But that was now our new AO. It was also here in Talafar that we teamed with 1st Cav Aviation, conducting aerial flash TCPs, interdicting smugglers in the open desert. Y'all remember that? That was fun, for me personally, watching vehicles stop in the middle of the desert every time they saw a helicopter flying over, because they were absolutely conditioned. It was like, holy shit, these guys. So every soldier, every day, you faced an enemy that was dedicated to killing us. They used IEDs, EFPs, suicide vehicles. So much so, Alpha Company took one out. There's a good video if you haven't seen it. Alpha Company actually took one out, and it's on video where they destroyed the suicide vehicle that was coming to attack them. But they also took one to Cop Anna and destroyed that cop. Pretty serious. We took RPGs, we faced snipers, we faced it all, and we gave it right back. We have crews in our battalion. That have struck double-digit IEDs, and that's the term I use, double-digit.
13.
I use that term because that's not a loose term. You struck over 10 IEDs and you survived. And that's because you survived because of that Stryker combat vehicle and your training. I later had an opportunity to personally thank General Shinseki. He was the former Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He's the guy responsible for bringing the Stryker combat vehicle into the Army's arsenal. I walked up to him one day when I saw him. I said, "Hey, sir, I want to thank you. I want to thank you personally." I explained to him that I'm alive and my soldiers are alive because of that combat vehicle, and I want to thank you for bringing that to the inventory. And he was sincere. He looked at me and goes, "Damn, I wish I was doing what you're doing. I wish I was with you." We were the first to conduct mosque raids in Baghdad. We revealed the hypocrisies of the sectarian violence. Instead of places to worship, they were actually places of war. They were housing weapons, IDs, black uniforms, and makeshift medical treatment facilities. You were the first to expose that. You were the first ones to expose that to the world. not just to Baghdad, but to the world of the sectarian violence and how it was being facilitated. Recently, I was doing some research for the work that I'm doing in support of Iraq. If you don't know, I'm a defense consultant, and Iraq is one of my countries that I support. I'm helping build capacity. I continue what you all were doing and what I was doing in Iraq. I'm still doing it now in a civilian capacity, helping them build capacity. But in part of that job, I was doing some research, and I came across, I did not know this existed, but there's a 2-volume U.S. Army historical documentation of Operation Iraqi Freedom. It's about 700 pages long. It's huge, 2 volumes. Well, curious, obviously, I immediately jumped to our time in Iraq and how they captured the war and read the section about the extension, our extension, where they called out our brigade and our battalion by name. This is U.S. Army history. This is U.S. Army history where your brigade, 172nd and 423 were called out by name. And it said that the decision behind, they talked about the decision behind extending this, the pain and suffering that ensued, and our actions and contributions supporting Operation Together Forward, which was the big operation that we all jumped in on in Baghdad when we got extended to go to Baghdad, where we cleared every neighborhood. We cleared every neighborhood in Baghdad in 130-degree temperatures in full body armor. Full body armor. I'll never forget. Doc Williams. Hey, Doc, I smell real bad. I said, Doc, I smell like ammonia. I said, what is that? He goes, oh, that's, you have no fat. You're burning off muscle tissue. When your body burns off muscle tissue, that gives an ammonia smell. So Doc Williams was one that's what every one of our soldiers experienced when we got extended when we were doing clearing operations in Baghdad. They also highlighted the sectarian conflict that we inherited and our problems with the federal police, including how our battalion solved the meat market massacre in the Bahia district, where ultimately we relieved the entire police battalion. We all have our extension stories, and I'm sure could easily fill a book of its own. Here's my story. This is my story as the commander. The extension was an entirely new challenge. After completing 12 successful months of combat, I didn't expect this. We were extended. I remember I was sitting in headquarters in Talafar waiting for my rotator flight to fly home, fly to Kuwait. When Colonel Shields, my brigade commander, called, he said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Why? Why would I need to be sitting down?" He responded quickly by saying, "We've been extended." "For what?" I asked. He said, "Baghdad. The sectarian killings are off the charts, and they want our striker brigade in Baghdad." He then quickly responded and said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "Yes." "Extended for how long?" Because I know you're going to ask. "For how long? And what about my soldiers when I will get them back?" He goes, "I do not know for how long, and we are working on getting your soldiers back." And without remorse and without hesitation, he looked at me, or said on the phone, "How fast can you get to Baghdad?" And I was like, "God, you got to kill him." So I was immediately thrown back into the fight of reorganizing our battalion and getting our battalion ready to go and figuring out how I was going to message you all and message to my families back in Alaska. Now, with soldiers in 3 countries, Iraq, Kuwait, and Alaska, I often tell this analogy that the extension was like being on a championship football team, having just won your regular season and the playoffs. You were undefeated. And now you're going to the Super Bowl, because we all knew Baghdad was a shit. We all knew it was ugly. So we're going to the Super Bowl, we're going to Baghdad, and I'm going to Baghdad without my winning team. Keep in mind, I'm down 300 people. I'm also down a striker company. Remember, we gave a striker company to the Rangers because they wanted some of our shit. Now I'm going to the Super Bowl without your winning team. I'm down soldiers, equipment, all those things that made us a winning team. Now before game day, we had to reorganize and re-equip for the fight in Baghdad. I also tell the story that now, this extension, I'm fighting a 2-front war. I'm not just fighting in Iraq, I'm also fighting the fight in Alaska, because I'm dealing with all the drama that's going back on in Alaska. I'm now having to look at how we're going to reorganize my battalion to fight in Baghdad. And oh, by the way, it was immediate, it was pressing. They wanted us now. But I also dealt with all the drama and the fallout because this was ugly. This was chaos amongst our battalion and our families. The pain and suffering that was going on was horrible. Many of you may not know that of the soldiers that came back to Alaska, there was 200 of you. I had to do a memo, a letter of justification of why I needed your ass back. The brigade commander told me, he says, John, take a knee, sit down, drink some water. Just give me the memo. I was like, sir, this is stupid. Dude, I've got medics, I've got gunners, I've got drivers, I've got my sergeant major, my battalion XO, my logisticians, everybody, because we had a complicated redeployment. I'd sent a very robust team home to handle that because we were doing a split redeployment to Wainwright and to Anchorage. And now I had to justify why I needed my team back. And I'm doing this in combat in the pig squalor that they put us up in Baghdad.
Yeah. Intense.
So yeah, you know where my mind was. All right. So I still run into people today. When we start talking and we start talking about Baghdad and Iraq and everything else, and the story comes up about extension, and they're like, they go, that was you? They're like, holy shit, that was you? I said, yeah, that was our battalion. That was our battalion. Because it's folklore in the United States Army right now. It's folklore. As I wrap up, I'm going to say, did your extension matter? Did your service matter? Yes. Because of your performance, our battalion was awarded the Valorous Unit Award. You also added an OIF campaign streamer to our colors, our distinguished regimental colors. Your blood, your DNA are now forever forged into the 23rd Infantry Regimental history. Your legacy lives on just like the distinguished veterans that came before us, that mentored us. You lived up to and you greatly exceeded those expectations. You honored the 23rd Infantry Regiment. You provided a safe and secure environment so the Iraqis could hold their first democratic elections, including passing out flat soccer balls to the Iraqi children.
I want a hookah.
Don't forget the spicy candy.
Your battalion solved the Meat Market Massacre in Baghdad, where 22 Iraqis were murdered. Murdered because of sectarian violence. They were murdered by the federal police, of which we later relieved that police brigade. We escorted them out of town. That was pretty spicy. But that's something you did, something you earned. It was because of your aggressiveness and your performance that some of this stuff happened, that you broke the code and you fixed some of the sectarian violence that was going on in Baghdad, because the commanding general of Iraq acknowledged what you were doing and he supported us. That's why he let us go into mosques. That's why he let us do what we were doing, because he trusted us. He trusted what you were doing, you were delivering. You captured an IED factory in Baghdad. You may not know that. During Operation Together Forward, during our patrols, we came across an IED factory. We identified it, we flagged it, we called in JIADO, we called in professionals because we knew it was big. It was a sophisticated IED factory. And let me tell you, what you may not know, and most of you don't know, is that the guy that was in charge of that IED factory, his name is Omar. FBI have been tracking him for years. They've been following him for years after our service in Iraq. Years after I was contacted, in uniform and out of uniform, I was contacted by the FBI. They were still calling me, asking me for information on this guy in this mission. I provided them everything that I had. He was later caught, detained, and identified in Turkey and extradited to the United States under FBI control. He's now in prison. This guy was responsible. This guy was responsible for killing hundreds, if not thousands, and injuring thousands of U.S. soldiers in Baghdad. Again, our battalion was responsible for that. Did your extension matter? This was our biggest challenge, and as I told you in Baghdad, I will repeat it again tonight. albeit a painful experience and a memory, our extension saved lives. There was no unit more qualified to do what we did in Baghdad than you. That's why we were extended. It sucked. It was hard. It was painful. But you saved your brother's lives. You saved American lives. Trust me. Because you and I both know young units can't go into Baghdad doing what you did and what you were professionals at and survive. So did your extension matter? Absolutely matter.
Yes.
So don't ever forget that.
Hey, sir.
Yeah.
I'm going to sidetrack Colonel's speech, but years and years later, a guy that I worked with came from the Ranger Regiment, and I told Colonel Norson this morning the current commander of the Ranger Regiment, back when he was a company commander, was telling a story to a Ranger platoon leader in Afghanistan, and said, he was telling this Ranger platoon leader, he goes, who had come from Colonel Norris's Stryker Brigade, the 4th Infantry Division. Colonel Norris was a brigade commander. And they're in Afghanistan, and this lieutenant had gone and pulled the bodies from Extortion 17 when the SEALs were shot down in the Chinook and whatnot. And he's telling him, he's like, he goes, I don't know what's up with you Stryker guy, like these guys, like, he goes, you're walking around like you're invincible, like you're just this, like you can't get killed. He goes, last time I saw that was with this damn Stryker unit out of Alaska. I was a lieutenant, and I was with them up near the border of Syria. These guys are just walking around like they can't get killed on the objective. And it was when Bravo Company went up to, and Charlie Company's AO with this platoon from Ranger Regiment to go do this raid at dawn. I think it was Chirillo's platoon or maybe a 2nd platoon had gone and done it. Well, that platoon leader is now the current commander of Ranger Regiment.
Wow.
And so when Colonel Norris talks about that extension, I think it is a point that needs to be reemphasized. You may not see yourself as a badass because you didn't halo jump. You may not see yourself as a hardcore guy because you weren't in action every day. But you don't realize there were people that were so much more fearful, and you guys collectively were so much more
Fearless.
assured and fearless in your camaraderie and trust. That, as Major Colonel Retired Baker said, that didn't happen a lot. A lot of it's because y'all were together for so long, right? We were all together for so long, and the Army doesn't get units to stand together. So it really is as special as he's saying. Maybe not for the reasons you want to think, but it really was special. And you guys truly were as hard as woodpecker lips. Even though you don't see yourself as that, you're pretty hard guys.
Cool. Cheers. All right, in closing, I would like to finish tonight with a word of gratitude. We built the most cohesive team that I've ever served with in my 35-year career. Didn't expect that either. We equipped, trained, we self-deployed to Fort Wainwright too many times, Fort Lewis, Washington, JRTC, and on to Iraq for combat operations, fighting in the 2nd largest city in Iraq, Mosul, followed by the end of mission transition, then extended and sent to Baghdad, now the largest city in Iraq. And I would note, this was all accomplished during the height of the war. So if you do any statistics analysis of Operation Iraqi Freedom and you see the spike of the violence in the war, that was us, okay? That was your time. This was clearly no easy journey, but one that I'm extremely proud to have been a part of. Thank you for your service, your sacrifices, and your unwavering commitment to our battalion and our nation. It is a privilege to be a part of this extraordinary group of warriors. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America, and God bless the Tomahawks we serve.
Cool. Yes, sir.
Oh.